Chapter 1741. The five limit Douluo light dark Douluo long Yeyu, Holy Spirit Douluo Yali, Titan Douluo Yuan and Zenshin, Free Sky Douluo Yuan and Tiandang, and Keeling Douluo Tongyu were all present. The only absentee was old man Chen the sweeper. Chen Zhenji had told Tang Wuling that all he wanted was to stay at and protect Shrek Academy, but he wasn't going to be participating in any of Shrek Academy's operations against other powers. That was a line that he was unwilling to cross. Of course, it was very likely that he would change his mind if Long Yeyu asked him to do so, but at the very least, he was still only old man Chen the sweeper for now. Long Yeyu had met him on 3 occasions, making sure to hurl verbal abuse at him every time, but he refused to leave. Aside from the five limit Douluo and Shrek's 7 monsters, Lan Muzi, Tang Yunmeng, and Wu Zhangkong were also present. Lan Muzi and Tang Yunmeng had already rebuilt the inner court of Shrek Academy, and even though there still weren't many inner court disciples, it was now ready to accept disciples. Wu Zhangkong was still the principal of the outer court, and it was being run in a very orderly fashion under his leadership. Furthermore, he was personally involved in teaching students and training teachers. This group was the true core of Shrek Academy, and aside from them, there were also 3 guests in the Sea Gods Pavilion, which was a very rare sight in Sea Gods Pavilion meetings. These 3 were amorous Douluo Zhangxin, heartless Douluo Cao, and the head soul weaponry researcher of the Tang sect, Ling Zichen. It was no exaggeration to say that this was the most formidable lineup that had ever gathered in the Sea Gods Pavilion. Even at the very height of Shrek Academy's power, there had never been as many as 7 limit Douluo in a Sea Gods Pavilion meeting, and that wasn't even taking into account Tang Wulin, whose powers were already comparable with those of a limit Douluo. Sima Jinkai and Arahang weren't in attendance. They were both deferring to Tang Wulin's better judgment. Arahang had made a trip back to the body sect and had only recently returned, bringing with him a piece of good news, which was that following some discussion with Niu Yi, Arahang had taken over as the sect master of the body sect and had brought the body sect over to Shrek City. That's right, the current body sect was now also a part of Shrek City. The reason Arahang provided for this was very simple. Only in Shrek City could the body sect truly flourish. At the same time, he had made a request toward Shrek Academy. Having become a member of Shrek City, the body sect was going to pledge itself to protect the city and Shrek Academy, but in exchange, Arahang requested for Shrek Academy to recommend its students with exceptional body martial souls to the body sect in order to continue the sect's lineage. After some discussion with the elders of the academy, Tang Wulin agreed to this request, and this was why the body sect had moved to Shrek City in its entirety without any hesitation. Even though the body sect was far from its heyday, it was still a top-tier sect with an extremely illustrious history, and no one on the entire continent could compare with the sect when it came to nurturing body martial souls. Even in arguably the worst era of the body sect, it was still able to produce Arahang, who had attained the invincible Vajra body. What would the sect be able to accomplish in the future? At this point, Shrek City had already gathered 4 major powers, comprised of Shrek Academy, the Tang sect, the body sect, and the Yuanan family, thereby further boosting its overall power. Tang Wulin had intended to give the body sect a seat in the Sea Gods Pavilion, only to be refused by Arahang, who trusted Tang Wulin to represent the body sect. In the future, once Tang Wulin retired, different arrangements could be made, but for now, Arahang saw no need for another body sect representative in the Sea Gods Pavilion. With the inclusion of these major powers, the new Shrek City had well and truly become the most powerful city on the entire continent. The city was housing close to 10 limit Douluo, and this alone was already a staggering amount of power to be gathered in one place. Pavilion Master. Everyone extended respectful salutes toward Tang Wulin, even all of the limit Douluo present. Tang Wulin ranked above them in official status, and tradition had to be upheld. Tang Wulin hurriedly returned everyone's salutes before making his way to the main seat. Please take a seat, everyone. Looking at all of the powerful beings present, a hint of emotion welled up in his heart. Not long ago, Shrek City had been nothing more than a massive crater, and the only ones who remained were Shrek's 7 monsters and Yali. At the time, they had departed with barely any hope in their hearts, but now, they had returned, and Shrek City had been rebuilt. The new Shrek City was more powerful than ever, and it had once again become the center of attention for the entire continent. Even the Federation didn't dare to do anything to Shrek City anymore. It would still take some more time for Shrek Academy to truly recover its status as the #1 academy. It required more young talent to pass on its heritage, but looking at it now, this seemed to only be a matter of time. Thank you for attending today's Sea Gods Pavilion meeting, everyone. This is an extremely important meeting for both Shrek Academy and the Tang sect, Tang Wulin said, cutting straight to the chase. Serious looks appeared on everyone's faces, particularly those who had been present during the Shrek City bombing. Tang Wulin took a deep breath before continuing. A few years ago, 2 Godslayer missiles were detonated within Shrek City, destroying Shrek Academy and the Tang sect, resulting in countless lost lives. The entire city was destroyed, and after thorough investigation, we've determined beyond a doubt that the Holy Spirit cult is the main culprit, but it had an accomplice, which was the Spirit Pagoda. Thus, he gave everyone a detailed recount of how he had discovered the collusion between the Spirit Pagoda and the Holy Spirit cult back when he was on the Dou Spirit continent. Based on all of this, we are absolutely sure that the Spirit Pagoda was involved in the Shrek City bombing, thereby making them sworn enemies of Shrek Academy and the Tang sect. Millions of people perished in Shrek City on that day, and now that Shrek City has been rebuilt, it's time that we exacted our revenge. As the Sea Gods Pavilion Master of Shrek Academy, I hereby declare that Shrek Academy and the Tang sect will be declaring war on the Spirit Pagoda. However, we won't be harming any innocent individuals. Our target is the Kyangi family. Tang Wulin's voice was extremely decisive, and tears immediately welled up in Yoli's eyes as intense hatred surfaced in her heart. She had always been so kind and had spent her entire life sacrificing herself for the sake of others, but the husband whom she dearly loved had perished during that very same bombing. All of the people present from Shrek Academy and the Tang sect were raring to go. How do you plan to do this? Tongyu asked. Tang Wulin replied, our revenge will be completely open and above board. We're going to Spirit Pagoda headquarters to face the Kyangi family in a battle to the death. Anyone who tries to stand in our way will be enemies of Shrek Academy and the Tang sect. This is something that only concerns Shrek Academy and the Tang sect, so there's no need for you and the 2 seniors of the Yuanan family to get involved. Tongyu replied, my life is yours. I'll follow you in anything you do, so there's no need to try and dissuade me. Yuan and Tiandang said, I didn't see you shying away back when we were facing the demonic plane together, Sect Master Tang. Besides, this is not just revenge for Shrek Academy and the Tang sect. We're also seeking justice for the millions of people who perished during that disaster. No matter how we look at it, there's no reason for us not to participate. On top of that, we're also residents of Shrek City. We wouldn't be able to live with ourselves if we refrained from participating in this cause. Ever since the Yuanan family had moved into Shrek City, they had been greatly touched by everything that Shrek Academy had done for them. Now that Shrek City was growing in power by the day and both Yuan and Zenshin and Yuan and Tiandang had received their suits of 4-word battle armor, what excuse did they have not to fight for Shrek City? Chapter 1742. Besides, no one was of the opinion that Shrek Academy would fail in this revenge operation. The new generation of Shrek's 7 monsters had already matured, and as Tang Wulin looked around the room, he was met with the decisive eyes of everyone, regardless of whether they were members of Shrek Academy or the Tang sect. Intense hatred was currently brewing in their hearts. All of them had lost friends and loved ones during the Shrek City bombing, not to mention all of the other innocent lives that had been lost during the disaster. The past Shrek City was the #1 city on the continent, the most prosperous city in all the lands, but it had been completely destroyed in a single night. All of Shrek's 7 monsters could still clearly recall every single word that Yang Ning had said prior to his death and the determined look in his eyes. Tang Wulin slowly rose to his feet before raising his right hand, and a silver sphere instantly appeared in his grasp amid a flash of light. It was none other than the divine Atlas sphere. In the name of the Atlas Douluo with his divine Atlas sphere acting as witness, from this day forth, Shrek Academy and the Tang sect officially declares war on the Kyangi family. Tang Wulin's voice was completely implacable, and his eyes were glowing brightly. The countless nights he had spent mourning and hoping were finally going to bear fruit now. Everyone stood up in unison, and a series of almighty auras erupted within the Sea Gods Pavilion, causing the entire Sea Gods lake to ripple and churn. The long-awaited moment had finally arrived. One day later, an official statement appeared in all major media outlets. It was a declaration of war from Shrek Academy and the Tang sect. After extensive investigation, it was discovered that the Holy Spirit cult had been responsible for the Shrek City bombing that took place several years ago, with the Spirit Pagoda led by the Kyangi family acting as accomplices. Today, Shrek City and the Tang sect are declaring war on the Holy Spirit cult and the Kyangi family, and we won't rest until both those parties are brought to justice. The statement was very simple and concise without any evidence given. This was a declaration made to the entire Douluo continent that Shrek Academy and the Tang sect didn't require any evidence to do what they wanted. They weren't a legal organization organization, nor the federal parliament. Furthermore, they weren't trying to prove anything by providing evidence. All they were doing was informing everyone that Shrek Academy and the Tang sect had joined forces to declare war on the Kayangyu family, and the Kayangyu family was their only target. The statement created a massive stir throughout the entire continent, and both the Dou faction and Eagle faction were astonished. Wasn't revenge supposed to be exacted in secret? How were the law enforcement departments supposed to react to this? At the same time, everyone knew just how heavy a blow that disaster had dealt the two superpower organizations. So many people had guessed that this would happen eventually, but they didn't think that Shrek Academy and the Tang sect would be so direct about it. No one knew where the Holy Spirit cult was, but the Spirit Pagoda headquarters was located near Shrek Academy, and it was a prime target. The Spirit Pagoda reacted very quickly, immediately releasing a public statement in response, strongly accusing Shrek Academy and the Tang sect of slander, while vehemently emphasizing that it had nothing to do with the Holy Spirit cult or the Shrek City bombing. In addition, it requested that Shrek Academy provide concrete evidence to support its claims, but Shrek Academy merely ignored this statement, completely refusing to entertain it. Having already released such a statement, it seemed that the revenge operation would commence before too long. All of a sudden, everyone across the entire continent had its attention focused on Shrek City. The federal parliament had issued letters to the two superpower organizations, urging them to exercise restraint in this society that was ruled by law, and it also requested that Shrek Academy provide more evidence so that the parliament could judge this matter. Furthermore, both the Dou faction and Eagle faction had sent representatives to Shrek City to try and mediate the situation, but Shrek City remained shut off to the outside world, refusing to grant the representatives entry. Meanwhile, the Spirit Pagoda was desperately seeking assistance from the Federation, but to no avail. It then released another public statement, stating that if Shrek Academy and the Tang sect were to act against the Spirit Pagoda, then it would retaliate accordingly, and thus, the atmosphere became extremely tense. Within a short span of 2 days, the Douluo continent was once again plunged into unrest after less than a year of peace. The Battle God Hall had publicly stated that this was a matter between Shrek Academy, the Tang sect, and the Spirit Pagoda, so it wouldn't be getting involved. It only expressed an urge for both sides to exercise restraint, which was essentially the same as saying nothing. Everyone could see that this revenge operation could no longer be stopped. The federal parliament immediately stationed 2 mecha corps on the route between the new Shrek City and the Spirit Pagoda, and that was the best the parliament could do on such short notice to try and prevent this conflict. However, would 2 mecha corps really be able to stop Shrek Academy and the Tang sect? On the third day, a group of people emerged from the front gate of Shrek Academy. There were only just over 20 people in the group, and they weren't giving off any overbearing auras as they calmly strode directly toward the Spirit Pagoda. The group was led by the current Sea God's Pavilion Master and Tang Sect Master, Dragon Emperor Douluo Tang Wuling. Accompanying were Shrek's 6 monsters, Sima Jinkai, Araheng, Wu Zhangkong, Lan Muzi, Tang Yunmeng, and the other leading figures of the younger generation. At the same time, there was a formidable limit Douluo lineup comprised of Light Dark Douluo Long Yeyu, Holy Spirit Douluo Yali, Heartless Douluo Cao Daja, Amorous Douluo Zhangxin, Titan Douluo Yuan and Zenshin, Free Sky Douluo Yuan and Tiandang, and Keeling Douluo Tongya. This was a total of 7 limit Douluo. In the distance, the 2 federal mecha corps were already visible, but the group continued to make its way toward the mecha corps as if they didn't exist. The 2 mecha corps had been keeping an eye on Shrek Academy and the Spirit Pagoda this entire time, and they immediately reacted as soon as the group emerged from Shrek City. One mecha after another rose up into the air in succession, forming a barrier to try and stop the Shrek Academy group. A red mecha descended in front of everyone, and a soldier in a major general uniform emerged from within. This was a tall and broad figure with an authoritative appearance, but he currently wore a resigned expression. He extended a slight bow toward Tang Wuling's group and said, "Greetings, Sex Master Tang. I was instructed by the Federation to maintain order in this place, so please don't make my job more difficult than it needs to be. Openly exacting revenge is illegal, and I know that we won't be able to stop you, but if you insist on continuing onward, then you'll have to step over the corpses of myself and my comrades." Prior to coming here, he already knew that there was no way that 2 mecha corps could stop everyone from Shrek Academy. As such, he could only stall the Shrek Academy group by using their love for peace and reluctance to harm innocent individuals against them. Chapter 1743. Tang Wuling replied, "No one can stop our revenge. Even if all of the military power of the entire continent were gathered here, it still wouldn't be enough to stop us, let alone 2 mecha corps. During the bombing, millions of lives were lost due to the ambitions of a select few. Did the federal parliament ever do anything to make things right? If you want us to uphold the law, then you must ensure that the law is fair and just. In the wake of such a major disaster, all that happened was that a few politicians were stripped of their positions. Did the federal parliament ever launch an investigation into what truly happened? Seeing as the Federation is incompetent, then we'll do it ourselves." Tang Wuling's eyes narrowed slightly as he spoke, and he slowly raised his right hand up into the air. A burst of deafening rumbling immediately rang out, and all of the air in the area seemed to have become very violent. Countless dragons' roars sounded throughout the entire space, and the sky instantly darkened as bolts of lightning began to flash up above, sending enormous pressure weighing down from the heavens. It was as if a heavenly tribulation were about to descend. The major general standing before Tang Wuling was astonished to see this. As a divine grade mega pilot, he was also a titled Douluo, but he had only just progressed to this level. At this moment, Tang Wuling was standing before him like the ruler of this entire world, and he found himself completely powerless and more vulnerable than ever before. Right at this moment, the 7 limit Douluo standing beside Tang Wuling strode forward, releasing their fearsome auras in unison. Firstly, a pair of giant swords that were over a kilometer in length appeared in midair. One sword was white while the other was azure, and they threatened to slice the entire sky apart, releasing a peerlessly sharp aura. These were the heartless and amorous swords conjured up through mental manifestation. Countless mechas began to fall from the sky before crashing to the ground. In the face of these terrifying auras, the mecha pilots were completely unable to continue piloting their mechas. Right at this moment, 2 thunderous dragons' roars rang out, and a pair of massive dragons, one black and one white, appeared in the sky. A string of loud cracks and pops immediately rang out in the very far distance. In that area, the journalists of all major media outlets had gathered to capture footage of this historic event, but all of their recording equipment instantly shattered in the face of the fearsome auras, rendering them unable to continue filming. The remaining high-grade mechas in the sky immediately descended as a result, and even the most powerful ones among them were only just barely able to control their descent rather than crashing down like broken elevators. Thus, the 2 mecha corps were completely disabled. Tang Wuling began to stride forward again, walking directly past the divine grade mecha pilot, who was completely powerless to stop him. That was terrifying. What had just transpired had instantly cast a huge shadow over the major general's heart. Almost all soul masters who chose to become mecha pilots were extremely confident in the future of technology, and the vast majority of them firmly believed that no matter how powerful an individual became, there was no way they could contend with soul technology. However, what he had just witnessed was a heavy blow to what he had held to be true for his entire life. It turned out that the most powerful soul masters were far more formidable than he had imagined. He was even beginning to regret choosing the mecha pilot route when he clearly had sufficient aptitude to go further in cultivation. His growth to the title Douluo level had been accelerated through the use of an extensive amount of resources, so he couldn't progress any further than this point. All of the mechas in front of Tang Wuling's group scattered, but the sky remained inky black as they made their way toward the Spirit Pagoda. This was definitely going to be a battle of unprecedented proportions, a clash between the most powerful forces on the entire continent. Just the auras of Tang Wuling's group alone had completely disabled 2 mecha corps. Everyone revered power and heroes, and even though the mecha pilots were stunned by what they had seen, they were also filled with admiration toward their foes. Only now did they realize just how powerful Shrek Academy and the Tang sect had become. Tang Wuling didn't appear to have accelerated at all, but he was rapidly approaching the Spirit Pagoda. At the top of the Spirit Pagoda, a group of several dozens of people had already gathered, and they were all looking on with grim expressions. Kayangyu Dongfang had already anticipated that this day would come, but he didn't think that Shrek Academy would employ such a direct approach. Instead of using Eternal Heaven, Shrek Academy was challenging them out in the open. What made him even more infuriated was that Shrek Academy had explicitly stated that it was only targeting the Kayangyu family, thereby sowing major dissension within the Spirit Pagoda. Many of the high-ranking members of the Spirit Pagoda were unaware that the Kayangyu family was involved in the Shrek Academy bombing, and now that the truth had been revealed to them in such an abrupt manner, they were naturally very displeased, and some had even begun to protest. However, all of their protests were temporarily quelled by the power of Kayangyu dieting, and Kayangyu Dongfang also explained that he had only done this for the sake of the Spirit Pagoda. At a time like this, the Spirit Pagoda had to unite. If an internal revolt were to occur and the Spirit Pagoda lost to Shrek Academy and the Tang sect, how would it be able to contend with those 2 superpowers in the future? He's improved yet again. We have to kill Tang Wuling today no matter the cost, Kayangyu dieting said in a cold voice. At this point, he had already completely calmed down. In the face of the powerful beings of Shrek Academy and the Tang sect, he wasn't fearful in the slightest. Instead, he was giving off an unmatched aura of determination, instilling a sense of calmness into the entire Spirit Pagoda camp. Come with me to face our enemies. Kayangyu Diding roared, and all of the glass on the top floor of the spirit pagoda in front of him shattered as he strode forward into midair. He raised his right hand, and a staff appeared in his grasp, threatening to pierce heaven and earth as it released a peerlessly mighty aura. Kayangyu Diding's emergence seemed to have tipped heaven and earth on their heads, and his aura began to elevate drastically, surging throughout this entire space. Regardless of how many enemies there were, he had no fear, and his unyielding will seemed to be infectious among his allies. Kayangyu Dongfang appeared beside him and also released his aura to resonate with Kayangyu Diding's. Immediately thereafter, 3 more figures appeared before releasing their auras, and all of them were at the limit Douluo level. This trio was comprised of Heavenly Phoenix Douluo Len Yaoshu, Purgatory Douluo Kayangyu Kingfeng, and another elderly woman. The spirit pagoda had brought out 5 limit Douluo. After the destruction of Shrek City, the spirit pagoda had quickly become the #1 organization on the entire continent, and in doing so, it had accumulated an enormous amount of power. Many of the most powerful beings of the spirit pagoda had retired due to age, but they would still emerge to protect the spirit pagoda in its hour of need. Chapter 1744. As soon as the 5 limit Douluos emerged, the morale of the Spirit Pagoda camp was noticeably elevated, and many more powerful beings quickly emerged from the Spirit Pagoda, including Silver Dragon Douluo Yuno and Kayangyu Sangting. The Shrek Academy and Tang Sect camp remained on the ground, while the Spirit Pagoda camp was hovering in midair, and their auras were clashing, creating a spectacular light show. The air was already beginning to warp, giving the entire area an ethereal look. All types of images were being conjured up and rapidly shifting through mental manifestation, presenting a doomsday-like scene, and only now did the Major General commanding the 2 Mecha Corps realize just how naive he had been to try and stop Tang Wuling's group. This was a clash between over 10 limit Douluo. Just as Tang Wulin had said, even the entire federal military wouldn't be able to stop them, let alone 2 Mecha Corps. Retreat. Retreat into the distance as soon as possible so we don't get caught up in the battle. He immediately commanded. Who knew just how fearsome clash between so many almighty beings would be? As the saying went, curiosity killed the cat. All he wanted to do was get as far away as possible, to the extent that he wasn't even interested in watching this clash anymore. Tang Wulin raised his head and settled his gaze upon Kayangyu Diding. As expected, a quasi-god was truly formidable. As Tang Wulin sensed the almighty aura being released by Kayangyu Diding, he couldn't help but think of the 3 opponents his father had faced. Kayangyu Diding's aura was already somewhat reminiscent of that of the staff Wulin figure among those 3 formidable gods, but unfortunately for him, he was still far away from reaching that level. Perhaps his aura could affect others, but it was completely ineffective against Tang Wulin. A faint smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face as the air rippled around him, and he suddenly rubbed his hands together, upon which the divine atlas sphere appeared in his grasp. He raised the spear high above his head and asked, Kayangyu Diding, Kayangyu Dongfang, do you 2 still recognize this divine atlas sphere? Both Kayangyu Diding and Kayangyu Dongfang's expressions changed slightly at the sight of the silver sphere. How could they possibly forget this sphere and its wielder? Tang Wulin continued. The Atlas Douluo perished as a result of your cowardly plot, along with many of our Shrek Academy's teachers, countless disciples of the Tang Wulin, and millions of Shrek City residents. Have you ever felt guilt or remorse over what you've done? You colluded with the Holy Spirit cult to plot against our Shrek City, and now, it's time for you to pay the price. Shrek Academy and the Tang Sect never target innocent individuals. We're only here for the Kayangyu family. However, if anyone dares to stand against us, then you'll be viewed as a sworn enemy. Tang Wulin's eyes were glowing with a cold light as he spoke. Kayangyu Dongfang replied, what evidence do you have aside from empty words? Shrek Academy and the Tang Sect are just using this as an excuse to take over the continent, just as the Spirit Hall had attempted in ancient times. Today, you're targeting our Spirit Pagoda. Tomorrow, you could direct your spear toward the entire Federation. The Spirit Pagoda has served the Soul Master world diligently for thousands of years. There's no way we're going to allow your devious plot to succeed, even if we have to die to stop you. Tang Wulin chuckled coldly. I see. I hope that the staff you're holding is as potent as that big mouth of yours. Do you dare to face me in a one-on-one battle? The atmosphere became even more tense in the wake of Tang Wulin's challenge. Kayangyu Diding was the most powerful being in the Spirit Pagoda camp, but he was no longer the chairman. As the current Spirit Pagoda chairman, Kayangyu Dongfang was still the organization's leading representative. In contrast, Tang Wulin represented Shrek Academy and the Tang Sect. No one could have imagined that Tang Wulin would propose a match between leaders from the get-go. Of course, there was no way that Kayangyu Dongfang could cower from such a challenge. Besides, he had been a limit Douluo for many years, so there was no way he was going to fear Tang Wulin. I'll gladly accept your challenge, but I hope you won't run away mid-battle. This will be a fight to the death. Kayangyu Dongfang roared as he strode forward with his coiling dragon staff. Tang Wulin also rose up into the air, stowing away the divine atlas sphere in exchange for the golden dragon spear as his eyes glowed with a piercing light. During his ascent, a thunderous dragon's roar rang out, and he activated his golden dragon body, upon which a layer of scales appeared all over his entire body. At the same time, he released his dragon's repulse in the form of a burst of golden light. Meanwhile, Kayangyu Dongfang's aura swelled drastically as 9 soul rings, 6 black and 3 red, rose up from beneath his feet. Having already been a demigod for so many years, he was a truly seasoned limit Douluo, and his powers weren't far off even compared to Kayangyu Diding's. He was the one who had led the Spirit Pagoda into this era of unprecedented prosperity. The 2 combatants faced one another in midair, and their auras were already clashing violently. Powerful energy fluctuations surged through the air, sweeping away large swathes of clouds. Both of their auras were elevating at an astonishing rate, and all of the other soul masters from both camps slowly retreated away. This was going to be a battle between their leaders, and no one else could get involved as this was a symbolic clash between the superpower organizations. Tang Wulin's eyes were filled with a determined light, but even now, he still couldn't help but take a glance at her out of the corners of his eyes. It had been a very long time since he had last seen her, and he missed her dearly. However, at this moment, she was currently in the opposing camp, and standing beside her was that abhorrent Kayangyu Sangting. A spasm of pain speared into Tang Wulin's heart, further fueling his battle intent, and his golden dragon spear began to glow on its own. He threw his head back and let loose a long roar, upon which a giant golden dragon projection instantly appeared behind him. The golden dragon king projection was several hundred meters in length, and every single scale on its body was clearly visible. Its bright red eyes were filled with violent wrath, and as it spread its wings, the entire sky was concealed behind it. A man standing in an obscure corner of the Spirit Pagoda group raised his eyebrows slightly upon seeing this, and he murmured to himself, he's already awakened the golden dragon king to this extent. The golden dragon king has inherited all of the dragon god's negative emotions. If he continues to awaken the golden dragon king, he'll go insane eventually. When that happens, even my lord may not be able to stop him. A hint of concern appeared in his eyes as he cast his gaze toward Yuna, and he couldn't understand what she was plotting. She should have devoured the golden dragon king long ago to become the dragon god again. Only when the dragon god was predominantly governed by the will of the silver dragon king was it complete and in its most powerful form. That was the wise yet calm, powerful yet measured dragon god that was required to lead them to greater heights. However, Yuna still hadn't made her move. Perhaps a good opportunity would be presented on this day. With that in mind, the man's eyes narrowed slightly as his hands balled up into tight fists. Tang Wulin's aura continued to elevate, and he instantly entered the realm of spear essence. All of a sudden, he sprang into action. Chapter 1745. Golden light flashed from his entire body, and he instantly reached Kayangyu Dongfang before unleashing countless spear projections toward him with his golden dragon spear. Kayangyu Dongfang harumphed coldly as he raised his coiling dragon staff and let loose a thunderous roar, unleashing the third unyielding staff technique, supporting heaven and earth. The core of the coiling dragon staff lied in its unyielding will. It refused to yield in the face of anyone or anything, even heaven and earth itself. This was the basis of the coiling dragon staff's soul, and it was being perfectly captured in Kayangyu Dongfang's attack. Even Kayangyu Diding couldn't help but give a nod of approval as he looked on from afar. Even if he were in his son's place, he wouldn't be able to execute this attack with any higher degree of perfection. In the face of Shrek Academy's challenge, Kayangyu Dongfang's unyielding will became even more powerful, and a cloud clang rang out as the 2 weapons clashed, sending powerful shockwaves surging through the air that created clear ripples proliferating through space. Dazzling golden light radiated from Tang Wulin's eyes, and even though he was was flying back in retreat, his golden dragon spear was only glowing brighter and brighter. After forcing back Tang Wuling with a single staff strike, Kaiangyu Dongfang's aura elevated even further, and at the same time, pieces of golden battle armor gushed out of his body like a layer of liquid, instantly encapsulating him from head to toe. Even though he was far older than Tang Wuling, he knew that he couldn't allow his pride to get the better of him in this battle of life and death. In order to strike Tang Wuling down in a single blow, he had released his four-word battle armor first. Kaiangyu Dongfang's four-word battle armor was named dominantly seizing heaven and earth, and it had already been with him through countless hardships and battles. In the instant Kaiangyu Dongfang donned his suit of four-word battle armor, his entire body seemed to have become transparent, and it was as if he were threatening to pierce a hole through the very heaven itself. The coiling dragon staff in his grasp instantly swelled to over 100 meters in length, and this wasn't just mental manifestation, it was the true form of the staff. Battling heaven and earth, countless staff projections appeared in the sky, swinging upward to smash countless cracks into the heavens. Immediately thereafter, the cracks devoured a vast amount of the natural energies in the surrounding area, including even the energy generated from his prior clash with Tang Wuling just now. All of this energy was then injected into the coiling dragon staff, enhancing its power to a terrifying peak. The coiling dragon staff swung down with the intent to shatter heaven and earth, and it was imbued with a reckless sense of insanity. All of the light glowing from Kaiangyu Dongfang's four-word battle armor had already flowed into the staff, and the giant dragons etched onto the staff seemed to have sprung to life, conjuring up a total of 9 giant dragon projections that came crashing down toward Tang Wuling alongside the coiling dragon staff. Even if a mountain was standing in the path of this staff, it would be instantly razed to the ground. Kaiangyu Dongfang hadn't thrown any experimental jabs. He was using his most powerful attack from the get-go. At the same time, changes were also beginning to appear on Tang Wuling's body. A layer of golden light began to radiate from under his golden scales, and the golden light was intertwined with rainbow light, enveloping Tang Wuling's entire body. The entire process was very fast, and there was nothing missing aside from a pair of wings. The pieces of battle armor were all of a bright golden color, and as they appeared, time seemed to have suddenly stood still. Even Kaiangyu Dongfang's coiling dragon staff faltered momentarily. This suit of four-word battle armor could no longer be described simply as lavish or beautiful. The armor didn't have any dragon patterns on its surface, but it was glowing with a peculiar sheen that seemed to be reflecting the roars of countless dragons. The pauldrons were sleek and extended all the way downward in a series of rhomboid shapes that were extremely harmonious. As the suit of battle armor encapsulated Tang Wuling's body, he seemed to have undergone a total transformation. Even the golden dragon spear in his grasp had become longer and sleeker, as if it had evolved as a result of the light flowing into it from the battle armor. A layer of dragon patterns appeared on the golden dragon spear, and even though the two tips of the spear were only releasing spear projections that were just over a foot in length, the projections seemed to hold substantial form. Tang Wuling slowly took a step forward, making his way directly toward the coiling dragon staff. Immediately thereafter, an indescribably mighty aura erupted from his body. This aura stemmed from both himself and his battle armor, and in that instant, it was as if he was standing on the summit of a giant mountain, releasing a wall of peerless might. This was the pride of an almighty being who stood at the pinnacle of all life forms, and even heaven and earth had to cower in the face of this fearsome pressure. In the spirit pagoda camp, Han Tanyi suddenly gave a muffled groan as a stunned look appeared on his face. He possessed the most powerful brain in the Soulmaster sword, thereby giving him the most potent spiritual power among everyone present, and he had been using his spiritual power this entire time to monitor the entire battlefield. However, as Tang Wuling donned his suit of battle armor and released that almighty aura, a burst of terrifying intent suddenly crashed into his mind, almost causing it to instantly collapse. He was given a massive fright by this and hurriedly withdrew his spiritual power. But even so, his mind had received a heavy blow. One had to realize that his spiritual power was infinitely approaching the divine origin realm. So unless Tang Wuling's spiritual power had reached the divine origin realm in that instant, there was no way that Han Tanyi's mind would have been dealt such a heavy blow. But how was this possible? Had Tang Wuling's spiritual power already reached the divine origin realm? If so, then this was terrible news for the spirit pagoda. Meanwhile, Tang Wuling and Kaiangyu Dongfang's clash had already commenced. At this moment, the ones who were most heavily affected by Tang Wuling's aura was actually the Kaiangyu family, including Kaiangyu Daiding, Kaiangyu Dongfang, Kaiangyu Qingfeng, and Kaiangyu Tangting. Their expressions had changed drastically as soon as Tang Wuling had released that aura, and in that instant, they felt the unyielding will in their hearts instantly reach a pinnacle. Except this unyielding will was stemming from Tang Wuling. In the instant that this superior unyielding will erupted out of Tang Wuling's body, Kaiangyu Dongfang's battle intent completely collapsed. This was a purely spiritual clash, and for limit Douluo level powerful beings like them, spiritual clashes were often even more fearsome than clashes of soul power. The basis of Kaiangyu Dongfang's power was built upon his unyielding will, which allowed him to attain absolute focus and the courage to face all opponents, even heaven and earth itself. However, in the face of this aura that was of the same nature but on a high level, the unyielding will in his heart crumbled, as did the spirit of his staff. Chapter 1746. The staff projections that he had unleashed through his battling heaven and earth were instantly cast into disarray, and it was also at this moment that Tang Wuling was suddenly filled with reckless abandon, as well as vicious insanity. In that instant, the insanity in the eyes of the golden dragon king behind Tang Wuling seemed to have completely overlapped with him, making him resemble a deranged god that had descended from the heavens. Restrict heaven and earth, dragon emperor fight. Restrict mediocrity, dragon emperor charge. This was the first time these two dragon emperor restriction techniques had been revealed to the public. Boom! The heavens dimmed, and the earth trembled violently. In that instant, it was as if the entire world had collapsed. Everything crumbled away in the instant the clash took place, and massive inky black rifts appeared in the sky, devouring everything in the surrounding area in a frenzy. Even the limit Douluos were forced to conjure up protective barriers of soul power and rapidly retreat in fear of being swept up in the shockwaves resulting from the clash. Kaiangyu Daiding and Kaiangyu Qingfeng wanted to reinforce Kaiangyu Dongfang, but in that instant, they were completely rooted to the spot. Everything had taken place in the blink of an eye, and no one had anticipated that the leaders of the two parties would engage in such a fierce clash from the get-go. This was a true battle of life and death. Generally speaking, limit Douluos weren't willing to push one another so hard in battle, and the fact that the clash was so fierce was a clear reflection of just how much bad blood there was between the two sides. All of the spectators in the distance looked on with bated breath, wondering who would come out on top from this clash. In the past, the result would have been nothing more than a foregone conclusion in their minds, but things were different now. Everyone knew that Kaiangyu Dongfang was a veteran limit Douluo and four-word battle armor master, but during several past clashes with Tang Wuling, Kaiangyu Dongfang had never once gained an absolute advantage. Furthermore, Tang Wuling was now a divine blacksmith. Regardless of whether he had improved in his cultivation since his last clash with Kaiangyu Dongfang, he definitely had a suit of four-word battle armor now. Even though both combatants were four-word battle armor masters, a suit of four-word battle armor forged by a divine blacksmith for himself would definitely be more powerful than normal suits of four-word battle armor, so it was really difficult to predict who would come out on top. Even the 7 limit Douluos of the Shrek Academy camp were astonished by the almighty aura that Tang Wuling released, let alone everyone else. In particular, light dark Douluo Long Yeyu, who was a quasi-god herself, had displayed the strongest reaction. Her spiritual power was the highest among the 7 limit Douluo, and it wasn't far off even compared with that of Han Tanyi. In addition to that, she was a limit Douluo, so she was able to judge high-tier spiritual power far more accurately than Han Tanyi. As such, as soon as Han Li unleashed his dragon emperor fight, she was able to almost instantly determine that he had reached the divine origin realm, even though it was only for an instant. That was well and truly the divine origin realm. The fact that Tang Wuling was able to achieve that level of spiritual power even for just a split second was already astonishing. Even young Ning's peak hadn't been able to replicate this. No one knew whether divine origin realm spiritual power was truly the key to attaining godhood, as no one aside from the gods had reached this level before. The darkness in the sky persisted for several dozens of seconds before slowly returning to normal, and at this point, the two figures in the sky had already returned to their original spots, making it look as if the clash between them had ever even taken place. Tang Wuling was hovering in midair with layers of rainbow light surging over his suit of battle armor alongside flashes of lightning. The golden dragon spear was trembling in his grasp, but it wasn't because he was trembling. It was the golden dragon spear itself that was trembling from unadulterated excitement. Faint red light was flashing within Tang Wuling's eyes, and even now, his deranged aura still hadn't completely faded. Having witnessed his transformation into the crimson dragon in the past, Shrek's 6 monsters were all quite concerned, but judging from his composure, he didn't seem to have lost control. As everyone directed their attention toward Kaiangyu Dongfang, they were all given a massive shock. Currently, Kaiangyu Dongfang was in terrible condition. His battle armor had become riddled with pits and bumps, and the metal was constantly rotting as it struggled to repair itself. What was most astonishing was that a hole had been pierced through his right shoulder, and his right arm had shrunk down to less than half its original size. Forward battle armor automatically adhered to the body of its wielder, so it had shrunk down to fit his arm, presenting a very unbalanced and uncoordinated appearance. There was no blood flowing out of the hole, but the muscles and ligaments within the wound were grey in color and slowly squirming as it attempted to regenerate. Kaiangyu Dongfang's face was deathly pale, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. One blow was all it had taken. Who could have imagined that the Sea God's Pavilion Master would be able to severely wound the Spirit Pagoda Chairman in just a single clash? Not only had Tang Wulin pierced through Kaiangyu Dongfang's forward battle armor, he had completely disabled one of Kaiangyu Dongfang's arms. All of a sudden, everyone was forced to look at Tang Wulin through new eyes. When had he become this powerful? That was only a single attack. Both of them had attacked without holding back at all. Yet Kaiangyu Dongfang had been completely and utterly crushed. Even Kaiangyu Diding's mouth was gaped open in shock. He was most aware of why this had happened. Judging from Tang Wulin's aura, he still hadn't reached the limit Douluo level yet, but after he donned his suit of forward battle armor, his power had spiked to beyond that of Kaiangyu Dongfang, exceeding the normal demigod level. It still wasn't at the quasi-god level yet, but nonetheless, the enhancement from that suit of forward battle armor was insane. Most importantly, the aura that he had just released seemed to be tailor-made to target the Kaiangyu family's coiling dragon staff. The essence of the unyielding staff techniques was intent and spirit, but once that spirit was outstripped, there was no way that the coiling dragon staff would be able to unleash its full power. As a result, Kaiangyu Dongfang was severely debilitated and sustained severe injuries in an instant. Kaiangyu Diding knew that even if he were in Kaiangyu Dongfang's place, he would have only been able to fare slightly better. They had always known that Tang Wulin was extremely powerful and that the speed of his development was unmatched, but never did they think that he would be able to rise to this level in such a short time. This was downright unimaginable. Kaiangyu Dongfang had repeatedly emphasized the need to kill Tang Wulin before he became the next youngling, and it seems that he was already very close to reaching that level. Once he became a limit Douluo, his forward battle armor would most likely elevate him straight to the quasi-god level, and with his enormous potential, there was a very good chance that he would even outstrip youngling in the future. Complete silence settled over the entire battlefield, and everyone's attention was fixed on Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin himself was filled with excitement. Even though using Dragon Emperor Fight and Dragon Emperor Charge in unison was quite taxing on his body, he had managed to pierce through Kaiangyu Dongfang's defenses. If it weren't for Kaiangyu Dongfang's quick reactions, the Golden Dragon Spear would have claimed more than just his arm. Even just a single arm belonging to a limit Douluo contained enormous life energy. So not only was Tang Wulin not feeling drained after that clash, his condition had improved instead. Chapter 1747. This was the first time he had used his Golden Dragon Moonsong battle armor, and only now was he discovering truly how powerful it was. Its power was extremely pure in that it perfectly enhanced all aspects of his power, and it didn't have any additional special abilities. It was purely a tool that amplified his power and offered a layer of additional protection. The shockwaves resulting from Kaiangyu Dongfang's battling heavily in earth was extremely fearsome, but it was entirely consumed by Tang Wulin's battle armor, and some of it was even reciprocated to him, allowing him to withstand that attack with ease. Even Tang Wulin himself didn't think that he would be able to gain such an absolute advantage in just a single strike. In the blink of an eye, his aura had been elevated to its peak. Kaiangyu Dongfang's eyes were filled with incredulity, followed by a look of intense resentment. He could clearly sense that his arm was completely useless now. This wasn't just a normal injury. The life energy of that arm had been completely stripped away. In the instant that the Golden Dragon Spear pierced through his battle armor, he immediately felt a burst of powerful devouring force, and all he could do was restrict the force within his right arm before quickly disengaging. This was already the best way to deal with the attack, but for a limit Douluo like him, losing his right arm meant that he would never be able to reach the quasi-god level, thereby completely dashing any hopes he had of becoming a god. In essence, Tang Wulin had snuffed out his future hope with a single attack, and he had never resented anyone as much as Tang Wulin in this moment. Tang Wulin pointed his Golden Dragon Spear directly at Kaiangyu Dongfang with killing intent flashing in his eyes. This wasn't a sparring match. It was a battle for revenge, a battle to the death. Powerful battle intent welled up in his heart, and he took a step forward, flying toward Kaiangyu Dongfang with a golden streak of rainbow light behind him. Kaiangyu Dongfang had already transferred his coiling dragon staff to his left hand, and in the face of the overbearing Tang Wulin, a hint of fear appeared in his eyes for the very first time. It was also right at this moment that the powerful beings of Shrek Academy and the Tang sect rose up into the air before flying toward the Spirit Pagoda camp. The battle was about to commence. Initially, the Spirit Pagoda had thought that it would be able to at least put up a good fight, but now, the Spirit Pagoda camp's confidence had completely faded. Tang Wulin had defeated Kaiangyu Dongfang, which meant that the Shrek Academy camp had one more limit Douluo level Soul Master among its ranks, while the Spirit Pagoda camp had one less Soul Master of that caliber. In the wake of such a turn of events, the outcome of this battle was virtually a foregone conclusion. Stop! Kaiangyu Diding suddenly yelled. He had put all of his power as a quasi-god into his voice, and everyone faltered momentarily. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Kaiangyu Kingfeng arrived beside Kaiangyu Dongfang, helping him withstand Tang Wulin's fearsome attack before the two rapidly retreated. Everyone from the Shrek Academy camp also arrived beside Tang Wulin, and the two sides faced off in midair. Kaiangyu Diding said in a cold voice, "Do you really plan to force our hand, Tang Wulin? We currently have over 60 night-grade soul missiles aimed straight at Shrek City. Don't tell me you can keep all of them at bay." Tang Wulin knew that Kaiangyu Diding was merely putting up a front to disguise his fear, and he said, "So you're going to try and bomb our city again? Go ahead. See if you can leave even a single scratch on Shrek City." In preparation for this revenge operation, Shrek Academy had been setting up the Soul Formation defense system under Ling Zichen's supervision. From the outside, it was impossible to see the system, but it was complete with functions such as interception, defense, and detection. Furthermore, the system was designed with Godslayer missiles in mind, and it was the basis for Shrek Academy and the Tang sect's confidence to finally commence this revenge operation. Kaiangyu Diding's expression darkened significantly, and for the very first time, he was struck by a sense of helplessness. The Spirit Pagoda had been dealt two heavy blows during the Joust for a Spouse event and the Battle God Hall incident. Meanwhile, Shrek Academy had gone from strength to strength, and it had now outstripped the Spirit Pagoda in terms of top-end power. Most importantly, the Tang sect's capture of Eternal Heaven had rid the Spirit Pagoda of the federal military support. It was this string of failures that finally led to this situation. The Shrek Academy camp had 7 limit Douluo, as well as Tang Wulin and Araheng, who possessed limit Douluo level power. Never in the history of the Douluo continent had such a fearsome lineup ever been assembled in a single power. The Spirit Pagoda was a powerhouse in its own right, but it only had 5 limit Douluo, one of whom had already sustained severe injuries. Furthermore, the rest of the Shrek Academy camp were no slouches, either. Shrek's 7 monsters had proven their power over and over again, and unless the Battle God Hall suddenly decided to support the Spirit Pagoda, it would have no chance in this clash. Tang Wulin raised his Golden Dragon Spear again, and bursts of bright light erupted forth as one suit of battle armor after another was released by the Shrek Academy camp. Among the Soul Masters in the Shrek Academy camp, over half of them were wearing suits of forward battle armor, and this astonishing sight instantly snuffed out what little remained of Kaiangyu Diding's hope. How could there be so many suits of forward battle armor? Was Tang Wulin already a superior divine blacksmith to Zhenhua? Regardless of what Kaiangyu Diding thought of this, the reality was undeniable. The Kaiangyu family was going to be wiped out. Kaiangyu Diding grabbed the hold of Kaiangyu Kingfeng, who was about to rush out, and sighed. "Our Kaiangyu family concedes defeat. Hold on for a moment, Tang Wulin." After that, Kaiangyu Diding began to fly forward slowly while Tang Wulin looked on through narrowed eyes. At this point, Tang Wulin wasn't afraid that Kaiangyu Diding would try anything funny. Kaiangyu Diding, Kaiangyu Dongfang, and Kaiangyu Kingfeng flew toward the Shrek Academy camp with grim expressions, and Kaiangyu Diding turned to the Spirit Pagoda camp as he declared, "Our Kaiangyu family admits defeat. It's true that we've engaged in many unscrupulous dealings, but only our family was involved in collusion with the Holy Spirit cult. No one else in the Spirit Pagoda was involved." He then turned back to face Tang Wulin. "Shrek Academy has always thought itself to be a fair and just organization, right? I am now admitting defeat on behalf of the Kaiangyu family, and you can do with us 3 as you please. However, I implore you not to harm any other members of the Spirit Pagoda, including my great great-grandson, Kyangyu's Hangting, who also wasn't involved in the collusion with the Holy Spirit cult. All that I ask is that you spare him so he can continue to pass down the bloodline of our Kyangyu family. If you agree to that, then the three of us will surrender without a fight. Otherwise, we'll be forced to resist, and I'm confident that I'll at least be able to take down a few of you with me. Kyangyu Diding's words put Tang Wuling in a rather difficult spot. The Shrek Academy camp had already gained the absolute upper hand, but he didn't think that Kyangyu Diding would adopt this course of action. Furthermore, he was right. If a quasi-god like him were to ignite his own flame of life, he would attain godly power for a short time. However, could he really afford to let Kyangyu's Hangting live? That was something Tang Wuling didn't want to do both for himself or the greater good. After all, leaving Kyangyu's Hangting alive would be the equivalent of allowing a lingering threat to exist. Who knew what could happen? Chapter 1748. Thus, Tang Wuling was at a temporary loss for what to do. Tang Wuling had promised Molan that he wouldn't harm innocent individuals, and that he would avoid killing as long as the Spirit Pagoda didn't resist. In this current situation, many of the powerful beings in the Spirit Pagoda camp, including Len Yaoshu, were looking at the trio from the Kyangyu family with different eyes. Great-grandfather, let me go with you. Kyangyu's Hangting rushed forward, only to be kicked flying by Kyangyu Dongfang before he could even reach Kyangyu Diding. Yuyun caught Kyangyu's Hangting in the distance, and Tang Wuling's heart throbbed with pain again upon seeing this. None of the members of the Shrek Academy camp said anything. At a time like this, Tang Wuling had to make the final decision, and regardless of what decision he made, it would be on behalf of the two superpower organizations. There was no doubt that the Kyangyu family status in the Spirit Pagoda would plummet once the three limit Douluos were detained, and the overall power of the Spirit Pagoda would also take a heavy hit. At the very least, it most likely wouldn't be able to pose a threat to Shrek Academy and the Tang sect for the next 1,000 years. As one of the most important Soulmaster organizations on the continent, the Spirit Pagoda's existence had a purpose, and thus, Tang Wuling was left struggling to weigh up his options. Right at this moment, Kyangyu Diding continued. On top of that, we're willing to provide compensation. I can give you the 69th grade soul missiles that I mentioned earlier, and we're also willing to issue a sum of money that would be sufficient for Shrek City's reconstruction. All that I ask is that you spare Hangting's life. He knew that there was no way that Shrek Academy would destroy the entire Spirit Pagoda. Otherwise, all it had to do was use Eternal Heaven. After all, no one in the outside world knew that Eternal Heaven had already fallen into the Tang sect's hands, but they had chosen to be direct and open, thereby giving them the moral high ground, but also placing certain moral shackles upon them. Furthermore, it wasn't in the Tang sect's style to punish the innocent simply due to association with the guilty party. Tang Wuling took a deep breath, and just as he was about to make his decision, a voice suddenly rang out in the distance. Wait. Everyone folded slightly as two powerful auras quickly approached from the distance. The two auras were quite powerful even to Tang Wuling and the others, so they had to belong to Limit Douluo. Which side were these two Limit Douluos on? Tang Wuling hurriedly turned toward that direction to discover two familiar figures, and heaved an internal sigh of relief as he knew that these two definitely wouldn't stand against Shrek Academy. The two figures were led by none other than Old Man Chen the Sweeper, otherwise known as Boundless Ocean Douluo Chen Zinji. With Long Ye present, there was no way that he would oppose Shrek Academy. However, the person accompanying Chen Zinji came as quite a shock to Tang Wuling. This was someone whom he had fought under before. It was the current commander of the Blood God Legion, Mira Douluo Zhang Wanyu. Why was he here? Wasn't he supposed to be guarding the abyssal passageway? As the leader of the Blood God Legion, there was no way he would leave unless extremely special circumstances arose. What do you want, Chen Zinji? Long Yayu immediately flew toward Chen Zinji with a cold expression. An awkward look immediately appeared on Chen Zinji's face at the sight of her, and he replied, I have something serious to share. Yayu, this is something that concerns the safety of the entire continent. At a time like this, the Soulmaster world must unite. We can't afford to be fighting among ourselves here. Long Yayu faltered slightly upon hearing this. He knew that Chen Zinji wouldn't say something like this lightly, so there had to be something extremely urgent happening. She didn't recognize Zhang Wanyu, but his general uniform and the fact that he was a Limit Douluo was enough for her to guess his identity. Chen Zinji made his way past Long Yayu before planting himself in between Tang Wuling and Kyangyu Diding. I need all of you to set aside this conflict for now. This is not the time to be fighting. Tang Wuling asked, what's going on, Senior Chen? Chen Zinji turned to Zhang Wanyu and said, go ahead, Wanyu. Only then did Tang Wuling notice that Zhang Wanyu was wearing a very grim expression, one that he had never seen on Zhang Wanyu's face before, even during that massive abyssal tide. Judging from his expression, it was clear that something serious had happened. Heartless Douluo Cow Dodger also flew over to Zhang Wanyu. Having partnered Zhang Wanyu for so long, he knew that Zhang Wanyu was an optimist and always treated everything with a positive attitude. At the same time, he was also a supporter of Shrek Academy, but he couldn't actively support the academy as he was bound by his duties in the Blood God Legion. What happened? Cow Dodger asked. Zhang Wanyu sighed. Something really bad. Is it an abyssal tide? It can't be. You wouldn't leave the Blood God Legion in the case of an abyssal tide. Tell me what happened. Cow Dodger urged as a hint of foreboding welled up in his heart. There's nothing wrong in the abyssal passageway, but I just received news that a massive number of abyssal creatures have appeared in the northern region of the continent, far more than the numbers we had faced during the abyssal tide. What? Both Tang Wuling and Cow Dodger were astonished to hear this. Abyssal creatures had appeared in the north. Both of their hearts immediately sank upon hearing this. Abyssal creatures yearned only for slaughter and destruction while being unkillable themselves. Aside from Tang Wuling's golden dragon spear, no other weapon could truly slay an abyssal creature, making them an extremely fearsome race. Furthermore, their objective was to devour the entire Douluo plane. According to Long Yayu, the abyssal plane was a plane of an even higher caliber than the Douluo plane. Without the protection of the divine realm, there was no way that the Douluo plane would be able to survive an all-out invasion from the abyssal plane. 6,000 years ago, the Douluo plane had almost fallen, and countless powerful beings were sacrificed to seal the abyssal passageway. Now, abyssal creatures had appeared in another place. What did this entail? Are you sure they're abyssal creatures? Cow Dodger asked. Zhang Wanyu replied, it's been confirmed. Photographs have been sent to us, and there are even enchantresses among them. The towns near the northernmost region of the continent have already been wiped out. Those accursed creatures target anything and everything that possesses life energy, regardless of whether it's humans, soul beasts, or plants. We have to organize people to go to the northern region and stop their spread as soon as possible. Otherwise, the continent will be in grave danger. A wry smile appeared on Chen Zinji's face, and he said, this is why you need to stop for now. At a time like this, we can't afford for any infighting to take place. The military is already transferring resources and the soldiers to the north as quickly as possible, and the Northern Legion is already set off. While the North Sea Legion is also on the verge of departing, the Central Legion will also be departing at this time tomorrow, while the Southern Legion is going to take a bit more time to mobilize. The Sea God Legion will also be setting off around tomorrow, but even the most powerful legions need strong leaders like all of you. I'll be returning to the Sea God Legion, and if possible, I would like to recruit all of you to join this effort. The survival of the continent is at stake, and I'm requesting assistance from you on behalf of the continent. Tang Wuling immediately replied, it's our duty to protect the continent. Rest assured, Senior Chen, Shrek Academy and the Tang sect will do everything in their power to contribute to this cause. Chen Zinji took a glance at Kyangyu Diding, then continued after a brief hesitation. Then regarding what's going on here, Tang Wuling also turned to Kyangyu Diding, then looked back at the Shrek Academy camp before taking a deep breath. We'll set our conflict aside for now to prioritize saving the continent. It seemed to have required all of his energy to utter that short sentence. They were on the cusp of exacting revenge, and it was very difficult for him to decide to back down now. However, if he insisted on killing the Kyangyu family here, the entire Spirit Pagoda would be thrown into disarray, and it was a very important piece in this effort to protect the continent. So this wasn't the time to be taking revenge. Chapter 1749. Tang Wuling's hands were clenched up into tight fists as he uttered those words, and it was as if he had just completed a Herculean task. His grand teacher, the Atlas Douluo, and his teacher, the Blazing Dragon Douluo, had all perished during that disaster, but in contrast with the crisis that had befallen the entire continent, Shrek Academy's revenge was nowhere near as important. He had undoubtedly made the right decision, but for Shrek Academy and the Tang sect, this was a very bitter pill to swallow. Cow Dodger laid a hand onto Tang Wuling's shoulder before giving it a firm squeeze as a gesture of consolation and support. There were tears in Tang Wuling's eyes as he turned to face Cow Dodger, and he yelled, let's go. Immediately thereafter, he rose up into the air and flew back toward Shrek City. He didn't dare to linger here any longer as he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold back the urge to follow through with this revenge operation. For the sake of the continent, this was the only option available to him. Gyuyuna was standing beside Kyangyu's Hangting in a slightly disoriented manner, but her gaze had remained locked on Tang Wuling this entire time. time. The mysterious man hidden within the spirit pagoda crowd was already prepared to strike, and his brows furrowed slightly upon witnessing Tang Wuling's departure. His brows furrowed even more tightly as he saw the concerned look on Gu Yun's face. Chen Zhenji looked on as Tang Wuling and the others departed, then turned to Kaiangyu Diding with a faint sigh. Brother Kaiangyu, I've repaid you for revoking my promise last time, but you have to take a stance on this matter as well. Kaiangyu Diding was naturally aware of what Chen Zhenji meant, and he replied, I'll remember what you've done for our Kaiangyu family, Brother Chen. We are indeed trying to claim the spot of the #1 organization on the continent, and it's true that we once plotted against Shrek Academy through unscrupulous means, but at all times, the spirit pagoda is a part of this continent. Rest assured, I'll get Dongfang to immediately mobilize all of the forces we're able to and send them to the front lines. We'll be operating alongside the Western Legion and Northwestern Legion with immediate effect. Good. This will be a chance for you to redeem yourselves, Chen Zhenji said as he took one last meaningful look at Kaiangyu Diding, then flew toward Shrek Academy alongside Zhang Wanyun. Kaiangyu Dongfang's face was deathly pale, and on the surface, it looked as if this was because he had lost an arm earlier, but in reality, this was a reaction to something else entirely. He finally understood what Ghost Emperor had been referring to during that cryptic call. Those crazy bastards had opened up a passageway to the abyssal plane in the northernmost region of the continent and allowed abyssal creatures to flood into this plane. Father. Kaiangyu Dongfang turned to Kaiangyu Diding with an aghast expression. Let's get back first before we talk, Kaiangyu Diding said before immediately departing. Only now did the Spirit Pagoda camp heave a collective sigh of relief before hurriedly following along back to the Spirit Pagoda headquarters. Thus concluded the historic revenge operation at Shrek Academy. By the time Chen Zhenji returned to the academy, Long Yeyu was already waiting for him on the drill ground. Chen Zhenji descended beside Long Yeyu, while in the distance, Cao Dazha waved toward Zhang Wanyun. A conflicted look appeared on Chen Zhenji's face, and he began, Yeyu, Long Yeyu slowly turned around to face him with a complex expression, and Chen Zhenji was surprised to see that the usual coldness that she appraised him with was currently absent from her eyes. What's wrong, Yeyu? Are you angry that I prevented you from getting revenge? I had no choice. Chen Zhenji wanted to explain himself, but Long Yu suddenly raised a finger and pressed it against his lips to silence him. This was a rather affectionate gesture, and Chen Zhenji immediately shuddered in response. Despite the fact that he was well over 100 years old, this situation still made his heart skip a beat, as if he had returned to the moment he had fallen in love for the first time. You're not to blame for this. I would have made the same choice in your place. Nothing is more important than protecting the continent, and one of the main goals of our Shrek Academy is to protect the peace of this continent. It's something that countless generations of people from Shrek Academy have worked tirelessly for. The one who had to make the most difficult decision was Wu Lin. He's already given far too much for this revenge operation, and to be honest, we're all very pleased to see that he was able to make such a hard decision. He's finally grown up and no longer requires our guidance. Chen Zhenji sighed. Indeed, he has. Shrek Academy has always been able to produce such exceptional talents, and in all honesty, I greatly admire that. In fact, I'm even a little bit envious. In this area, no other organization can hope to compete with Shrek Academy. Long Yeyu asked, You're going to the front lines, right? Are you going to be the commander-in-chief again? Chen Zhenji's brows furrowed slightly as he replied, I'm not sure, but I'll do my best to fight for the role. I don't trust anyone else in that position. All right, go on then, Long Yeyu said with a nod. Chen Zhenji was a little dumbstruck as he looked at her. He could clearly sense that there was something different about her today. In contrast with how cold she had been toward him in the past, she was being far more gentle and compassionate. Have you forgiven me? Chen Zhenji asked. This was what he wanted to find out the most before his departure. Long Yeyu sighed. It's already been so long. What's there to not forgive? I shouldn't have been so stubborn all this time. Chen Zhenji stepped forward and grabbed onto her arms in an urgent manner. What's going on with you, Yeyu? You're scaring me. This doesn't fit your personality. What's making you say this? Long Yeyu allowed him to hold onto her arms as a faint smile appeared on her face. You're already an old man, so quit acting like a brash young boy. Let me go now. Don't make a scene. Chen Zhenji's heart rate began to quicken even further. What's going on, Yeyu? Long Yeyu sighed. During the bombing, Yan Ming and all of the teachers sacrificed themselves to protect the academy, yet I didn't stay behind with them. I felt like I had unfinished business at the time, and I was fixated on taking revenge against you, so Yan Ming was able to persuade me to flee. Now, the younger generation has grown splendidly, and I can finally relax a little. Under Wu Lin's leadership, the academy is only going to become more and more prosperous. I'm sure you're aware of the situation in the abyssal plane, and I'm sure you know what it took to seal the abyssal plane 6,000 years ago. I'm already well over 100 years old, and I don't have long left to live. It's time I made my final mark on history. Chen Zhenji finally understood why Long Yeyu had suddenly become so open and forgiving. It was because she had already worked up the resolve to sacrifice herself, so none of this mattered anymore in her eyes. During the upcoming battle against the Abyssal Army, she was undoubtedly going to be protecting everyone from Shrek Academy at all costs. Tears instantly welled up in Chen Zhenji's eyes as he threw his arms around Long Yeyu. Don't do this. I need you to live. You have to live. Long Yeyu didn't struggle. Instead, she returned his embrace and rested her head onto his broad shoulder as she murmured to herself. It's been a very long time since I felt this. I still clearly remember the last time you held me like this. After that time, you left and never came back. Chen Zhenji stiffened upon hearing this, and he released her as tears began to flow down his face. I'm sorry, Yeyu. I really am. Long Yeyu gently wiped the tears from his face. You're still like a little boy. Don't you feel embarrassed? Stop crying. This isn't the Chen Zhenji I fell in love with. The Chen Zhenji I love is the one who rules over the battlefield like an unshakable mountain. The battle god who stands at the pinnacle of the Soulmaster world. Return to your legion. Only there will you return to becoming the Chen Zhenji that I hold so dear in my heart. Go and become a hero. Regardless of what happens, this will perhaps be the last time we get to fight alongside each other. Chen Zhenji took a deep breath, and in that instant, his emotions underwent a sudden shift. In that instant, it was as if he had returned to his former self, the boundless ocean Douluo who had the world at his fingertips. All right, in that case, let's go for one last dance. We'll show those clowns from the abyssal plane that we can still glow despite our age. As long as you're still alive on the battlefield, I'll be sure to remain by your side. This time, I'm never going to leave you again. Even if I die, I must die by your side. Looking at the Chen Zhenji of old, Long Yeyu was overcome by a flood of emotions. Chapter 1750. She could still clearly recall their first ever meeting. Back then, there were still complete newbies in the Soulmaster world. At the time, he had made a vow to her that he was going to become the most powerful Soulmaster in this world, and it was precisely his drive and ambition that had made her fall in love with him. Even though over 100 years had passed since then, she felt as if she were looking at the same Chen Zhenji from back then again. This was an indescribable feeling, as if both of them had returned to their youth in that instant. I'll go on ahead. Let's reunite in the north. Prior to seeing me, you have to promise me that you won't take any risks. Chen Zhenji said in a serious manner. Long Yeyu nodded in response. All right, I'll see you on the front lines. Chen Zhenji took a deep breath and enveloped her in a tight embrace once again before flying away. Long Yeyu reflexively took a step forward and yelled, Chen Zhenji, if we survive this ordeal and you're still willing to come back to Shrek Academy, then I'll forgive you. Chen Zhenji stiffened in midair upon hearing this, and he offered no response other than to give a firm nod before accelerating into the distance. Looking on at his departing figure, tears finally began to flow down Long Yeyu's face. Perhaps this really was going to be their last dance. At the Spirit Pagoda, those bastards have gone insane. They've completely joined forces with the abyssal plane. How could they do this? They're still humans, are they not? Kaiangyu Dongfang yelled. There was only his brother and father in the same room with him. Kaiangyu Dongfang wore a calm expression, not looking at all like he had just escaped death by the thinnest of margins. A cold smile appeared on Kaiangyu Kingfeng's face. I told you long ago that working with them was no different from shooting yourself in the foot. Kaiangyu Dongfang turned to Kaiangyu Kingfeng and said, even so, I don't regret this. If I could go back, I would still drop those two Godslayer missiles onto Shrek Academy. With Shrek Academy constantly standing in our way, when will we ever be able to rise to the top? The fact of the matter is that I had made the right decision. My only regret is that I failed to wipe out everyone from Shrek Academy. A cold look flashed through Kaiangyu Kingfeng's eyes, but he didn't say anything in response. Kaiangyu Diding said in a cold voice, those bastards from the Holy Spirit cult have forsaken their humanity long ago. All they want is destructive and deathly energy. While the abyssal plane wants life energy, all life forms will release destructive and deathly energy at the point of their demise, so there's no conflict of interest between them. It looks like their actions are insane, but in reality, they have a straightforward plan and a unified goal. The abyssal plane wants to devour our entire Douluo plane as a stepping stone for evolution, while the Holy Spirit cult wants to use the destructive and deathly energy from the demise of the entire plane to help them attain godhood. We should have anticipated long ago that they would be ideal collaborators with one another. It's just that we failed to consider that the abyssal plane had the ability to open up another passageway. Kyangu Dongfeng was at a loss for what to do. So how should we proceed? A cold light flashed through Kyangu Diding's eyes. What do you think? What else can we do aside from facing the abyssal plane with everyone else? If the entire plane ceases to exist, what will become of our spirit pagoda? We must protect the plane first and foremost above all else. A hesitant look appeared on Kyangu Dongfeng's face upon hearing this. Then are we really going to work with Shrek Academy and the others? Kyangu Diding immediately flared up with rage. Are you even thinking before you speak? I chose you to inherit my position because I thought you had sufficient critical thinking skills to be a good successor. Has your brain suddenly been thrown out the window? So what if you've lost an arm? There are many ways for you to recover it in the future. What's most important now is that we weather this upcoming storm. At the same time, we have to take advantage of this opportunity to weaken Shrek Academy and the Tang sects during the battle. So this is not necessarily a bad thing for us. Kyangu Dongfeng faltered slightly upon hearing this, but he quickly understood what Kyangu Diding was saying, and he took a deep breath before replying. I understand. I'll get everything arranged right away. Following Kyangu Dongfeng's departure, Kyangu Diding and Kyangu Kingfeng were the only ones left in the room. Kyangu Kingfeng also rose to his feet. I'm going as well. Kyangu Diding took a long look at him, then said, leave and don't come back. Take your wife with you. Kyangu Kingfeng stiffened upon hearing this, and he turned around violently. What do you mean by that? Kyangu Diding replied, I know that you've always harbored resentment toward me, but I had to make the right decision. Dongfeng didn't fail due to his own inadequacies. He was simply unfortunate to have come up against the one who was chosen by fate. Even if I had to go back and make the decision again, I would still choose him. If you had been made my successor, you definitely wouldn't have done as well as him. He's decisive, ruthless, and he has some wisdom. You're not lacking in wisdom, but you are not decisive enough. My final piece of advice to you is to be more assertive and forceful in your decision making. The heritage of our Kyangu family can't end here, but no one knows what will happen in the future, and our top priority right now is to protect the continent. Take your branch of the family elsewhere, then adopt a new identity and cut off all ties with the Kyangu family. Regardless of whether we can successfully force the abyssal plane into retreat, Shrek Academy and the Tang sect won't be willing to let us off the hook. They'll make sure to wipe out our Kyangu family at all costs. If we somehow manage to win the battle against them, then you can come back. But if we lose, then don't ever come back. Pass down the bloodline of the Kyangu family. That will be your final duty. Dongfeng has already shouldered the heaviest burden in our family, so this burden will be for you to carry. Kyangu Kingfeng faltered slightly upon hearing this. You want me to run away like a coward? Kyangu Diding replied, no. Oftentimes, it's far harder to live than to die. Kyangu Kingfeng's brows furrowed tightly as he said, I won't be leaving. After that, he slammed the door and departed. In the same instant, Kyangu Diding suddenly seemed to have aged significantly, and he slowly closed his eyes in an exhausted manner. All of the military power on the entire Douluo continent quickly began to mobilize in a short time, but everything appeared to be normal on the surface. The Federation had made the right decision, which was to keep the news of the abyssal plane invasion strictly confidential to the public. The Northern Legion was situated the closest to the northernmost region of the continent, and it had already begun setting up defensive lines. At the same time, the North Sea Legion was transporting all types of war resources toward the north as quickly as possible. Records of abyssal creatures had existed since 6,000 years ago, and those who were aware of their existence knew just how terrifying they were. However, the current Douluo continent wasn't the same as the Douluo continent from 6,000 years ago. With the advancement of soul technology, the continent was far better equipped to target these abyssal creatures. Of course, the abyssal plane wasn't the continent's only enemy. It also had to face the threat of the Holy Spirit cult. Thus, the Federation had immediately issued mobilization orders to several major organizations, including Shrek Academy, the Tang sect, and the Spirit Pagoda. The Blood God Legion was unable to join in on this resistance effort as it had to continue to guard the abyssal passageway. Otherwise, if abyssal creatures would have fled into the continent from that passageway as well, then the continent would be facing enemies from both sides. At Shrek Academy, another Sea Gods Pavilion meeting was being held. Tang Wulin's eyes were still a little red from indignation and frustration. It had taken a Herculean effort for him to calm himself down. They had been on the brink of exacting revenge, only to be stumped at the final hurdle, and his pain was plain for all to see. However, he had no choice but to make this decision. Right now, revenge wasn't the top priority for Shrek Academy and the Tang sect. Instead, it was to work with the military to protect the continent. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.